What's up, guys? Welcome to the after show for the first time ever, at least partially broadcast on YouTube as well. With this podcast, it's constantly an effort of trying to improve things, make things better, be innovative, whatever. I really am never complacent with what we do, so we'll have to see where we go with this. But right now, the plan is to at least partially broadcast it on YouTube. I'm thinking because, as you guys know, with the after show, basically the way I handle it is I do all sorts of topics. It's the part of the show where you get to know about me personally, my interests, not just strictly MMA stuff, because even the most avid MMA fans can only talk about MMA so much. So the idea is basically to use this part of the show to talk about other interests. First of all, to keep me sane. Second of all, I think it adds a different level of intrigue. It adds some more, rawness, genuineness to the podcast. It's like last week I was talking with Matt Bissett on the podcast, and he basically, we were talking back and forth about how the things that people connect to most are these raw emotions, not the sort of cookie cutter, are you excited for your fight? How's your weight cut going? Oh, it's going good. I'm gonna beat him bad. Like all those generic sort of questions and answers, they drive me crazy. They drive the guests crazy, all this stuff. But you need it because it is an MMA podcast. I do need to fit within my genre somewhere. So the plan basically is to make the interviews kind of about that, branch out a little bit, and then make the after show completely separate from that. I've always wanted to kind of do a video thing, but we haven't ever attempted it, so we'll have to see how that works out. But anyway, as you guys know who listen to this after show, you would know that for the most part we get into other things. And for now, I might turn the whole thing live. The thing is, it's tougher for me too, because as much as I hate to admit this, I'll just be honest with you guys. If I stumble or hit a wall in what I want to say or anything like that, then in the podcast I can edit it. I've gotten pretty good at editing. You can just cut a part out and no one even knows. But in a video, you guys would obviously see some like quick cut from like this. All of a sudden I'd be over here talking about something else. So you can't edit it. So it is one take. It is live, essentially. It's not, but without me screwing with it or adjusting it and kind of leaving people to wonder what I just cut out, I kind of do have to go with whatever comes out the first time. So it is a little bit more high pressure. It's not as casual. I'm also on camera, so I have to at least, I can't look completely ridiculous. I'm wearing a t-shirt and a beanie right now, so nothing too crazy. But I do have to at least look somewhat presentable because I'm throwing myself up on YouTube. So there's extra sort of effort involved. So I don't think I'm going to do it for the entire after show. But what I will do, because it is an MMA outlet primarily, even though, like I said, the after show gets into some other areas, I do talk about MMA news during the Sports Center show as well. So I think what I will do is start off with MMA news, keep that part, as well as this sort of idle chit-chat at the beginning of the segment. Keep that in the YouTube video, do a little send-off to the people watching on YouTube, and then tell you to tune in for the show if you want to hear the interviews or the full after show or whatever. I think that's probably what I'm going to do. Like I said, it's a work in progress. It's the first time we're doing it, so I think that's what I'm going to do, but we'll see as we move forward. But then also with the interviews, I've always wanted to do interviews. You see Ariel Helwani, he's got this huge studio setup. He's got a giant TV that's projecting the Skype calls. People are Skyping in, video chatting. Sometimes he has people in studio. Even the phone calls, he's got a producer. He's New York Rick. I'm sure there's a team of people who are editing and producing his podcast. So it'd be nice to have all that. It's kind of hard to run on my own. I don't have crazy cameras. I'm on my webcam right now, but I can't really record. Or maybe I can. I don't know. I got to look into it more, to be honest. I don't know how to do it yet, but it'd be great to do live interviews, but a little bit tougher. So for now, just the after show. That's what we'll do. I will give you guys a preview of what I'll talk about in the after show to try to lure you into listening to the whole thing on the podcast. So first of all, I'm rescued from that cube life. Those of you who've been listening to the podcast recently, I've been just complaining and whining and being probably insufferable, talking about cube life, which is a term coined by KFC's from Barstool. Basically living in the cubicle. And my job, I'm an engineer, so I've been working outside at construction sites, things like that, inspecting the construction. So for the most part, I've been able to avoid the cube life, which thank God, because I don't know how people sit by their desk all day, just like talk about mindless droll and like all this stuff. It was driving me crazy. I did it for like 3 days, couldn't stop complaining about it. So I'm rescued though. Basically, I have like 2 or 3 people that I know from the cube life, or from my job, and they pulled some strings, got me out of there. Even my boss, who was like at one point I went to another job just for a day, and he was like, "Oh, take your time," like really trying to drop hints. And I still like felt a little uncomfortable, so I finished what I was doing there and came back. And he's like, "I thought I told you to like take your time. Like no one wants me to be in the office. It's miserable, and they know it. As a field guy, it's awful." But I'm rescued from that. That's probably all I'll say about that, to be honest. I know people don't care. It's just me whining and complaining. But The point is, things are looking up. I'm on the upside now. What else are we talking about? First of all, lots of good feedback last week on the Outside the Bubble segment with my roommate, Monica. I loved it. I thought it would be fun. So basically, I'll give you guys a little behind the scenes on that whole thing. I don't like to do too many segments. I mean, the after show I don't really consider a segment anyway, so I'm not counting that. But I don't like to do too many segments because I feel like it feels too much like morning radio. It's a little corny, a little tacky. So it's not really my cup of tea, not something that I like doing. But I had a couple good ideas. So I have this roommate that does not know MMA at all, and I thought it'd be an interesting opportunity. First of all, she's just readily available because she lives in the same exact apartment as me. I don't have to go to a friend's house or have some friend come over to my place or whatever, so that helps. But she also knows nothing about MMA, so I thought it'd be a really cool thing to do. I called it Outside the Bubble, but to do a little segment with someone who knew nothing about MMA, it'd be funny, like silly segment, have her do predictions, kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of saying that no one, even experts, don't know how to predict MMA fights, most unpredictable sport in the world, that old cliche, whatever. So I thought it'd be cool to have her come on and do that, and lots of good feedback. I got a lot of texts about it, a lot of messages, so that'll probably become a recurring segment. I think she enjoyed it as well. It'll probably become a recurring segment, but to take you guys behind the scenes with why I did that. So if you guys, there's a podcast, which I listen to a lot of podcasts. I mean, I have this one, but even MMA podcasts, I listen to maybe the MMA Hour, but for the most part, I listen to comedian podcasts, just different sort of fun ones, serious ones as well. Obviously, guys like Joe Rogan will do very serious podcasts, but I'll listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of them in particular, How Did This Get Made? It's a podcast about really terrible movies. If you guys watch The League, it's got Paul Scheer in it from The League, Ralphie from The League, also known as Jason Mantzoukas. He's in it, and then Paul Scheer's wife, June Diane Raphael. And she's hilarious because they'll be doing like really in-depth movie reviews, and it's clear that Paul Scheer and Jason Mantzoukas know a lot about it, a lot of jargon. They're really deep, immersed in the world of cinema and things like that. But June Diane Raphael, what she provides is she comes in and she'll be talking about like something like the example I always think of, and this I think I'm paraphrasing. I don't think it's actually from any particular episode, but the example I always think of with her is like, they'll be talking about like, I think this character like did this and it's a weird choice and stuff. And she's like, oh, I don't like him. And they're like, why not? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I don't like his hat. Like, who wears hats like that? I'm like, what? You like, you don't like? Yeah, I just don't like his hat. I don't like him. Like, it's just like, but it's like this really like strong, opinionated point, but based on like nothing except for like a feeling, hunch, and things like that. So that'd be funny to basically show her, interviews, things like that, things that actually provide nothing as far as direction, as far as who's going to win and things like that, and just get her opinion on it. But lots of good feedback. So as I said, that'll be a recurring segment, most likely. We'll have to see because I'm, like last week, doing the after show before I do the actual show. So we'll have to see how things actually work out. But I'm planning on doing my other idea for a recurring segment this week, if not in the near future. But my best friend, the guy that I watch a lot of, actually almost every MMA event, we've gone to a couple by ourselves, gone with groups as well, but just we've gone by ourselves as well. He's like my number one MMA fan in my group of friends. So we'll go and watch things like that. He unfortunately moved to California. Not unfortunately, huge opportunity for him. I'm very happy, but he moved to California. So I had this idea that'd be really cool, just as a fun way to keep in touch, and then also because he does know his stuff, to do a segment called Coast to Coast. So I'm on the East Coast, I'm in Connecticut, he moved to California on the West Coast. Coast to Coast, we just go through headlines, almost like we co-host, not every week, just like the thing with my roommate. It'll be, whatever, every 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. I think with the roommate, actually, we might do it before every pay-per-view, but maybe just when big news breaks, I'll do it with my friend, or if I have some time, or basically a slot I need to fill within the podcast if we're short a particular week or whatever. But it might be this week. We might start it this week, and you guys will know if you're listening to the podcast. If not, definitely in the near future. We've been talking about it. It's just a matter of him sort of getting settled in California. But we want to do that, called Coast to Coast, so hopefully that segment will come soon as well. And I think that's where, like I said, I don't want to get this confused and mixed up and have it be like a morning radio show or anything that formal, because the point of a podcast, in my opinion, is to make it kind of raw, just unfiltered, just what like this. I'm just talking to the camera. So hopefully we get those 2 recurring segments, call it a day. Maybe if I come up with a really good idea for another one, we can throw more in, but I definitely don't want to overdo it. And this is what I'm talking about with the YouTube video. I can't look things up on my phone without putting a delay. Normally I just edit as part of the podcast while I find the next thing. But in the video, no choice. I have to keep going. Let's see. All right, so that'll do it. I'm gonna do a little talk about the Dallas Cowboys as normal, and probably do a little talk about Westworld, which is a show I've been watching. But like I said, I'll save that for the actual after show. Cut the video. I'll get right into the MMA thing while I have you here. Like I said, I'll probably limit that to just MMA talk when it comes on to the YouTube portion of the show. But yeah, so basically the storyline of this past week or whatever, one huge MMA star returning to the UFC, another one seemingly departing. We'll start with the returning superstar, Ronda Rousey. You know, I did a YouTube video. You can go back in the channel and find it. My initial reaction to Ronda Rousey. Basically did a prediction, but happy she's back. I think she's probably the biggest star in the UFC. The only argument that I made, and I one time I went on James Lynch's podcast, another good one, check that out. I went on James Lynch's podcast and discussed this one time. Basically, the difference, I think Ronda Rousey is a more recognizable name than Conor McGregor, who I think is the other guy in the running for biggest star in the UFC. I think Rousey's a more recognizable name, but at the same time, my mom knows who Ronda Rousey is. But my mom knows who that is, but she's not going to go buy a pay-per-view. So I think McGregor's the bigger MMA star, which might actually translate to more pay-per-view sales. Because everyone who's mildly interested in fighting knows Conor McGregor. Sure, a lot more people know Ronda Rousey because they've seen her in, the Expendables or Entourage or whatever, but those people aren't necessarily going to translate to pay-per-view buys, in my opinion. So if you are asking me who the bigger star is, I think that Rousey's the bigger star, but McGregor actually draws more people into, pay-per-views or bars or whatever, Fight Pass subscriptions, whatever you want to call it. I think that he does a more effective job at selling the sport, and Ronda Rousey is just the bigger name because she's in movies, and she's even being a female fighter makes her unique in a certain way. So, I don't know. I think, but regardless, it's number one, number two biggest stars in the UFC by far. Ronda Rousey is back. I don't want to harp on it too much because I already did sort of go through this in the last time I did a YouTube video. Which, if you guys are listening to the podcast version of this, you should go back and listen to that for sure, because that basically was my full reaction, instant reaction, but I went back and watched it before I did this, and it's still how I feel about it, so I'll leave it at that. But as a quick summation, I think Ronda Rousey comes back and continues basically where she left off with her winning ways, not the loss to Holly Holm. I think that was a combination of a lot of factors. We've heard Dana White talk about how she kind of shies away from media. She doesn't really do that well with the pressures of media, which she was under an unbelievable on, like way more than McGregor, who also sort of had his thing where he retired, he didn't want to fly out for the press conference, all this stuff. Rousey was under way more pressure than that because she was doing way more, just general media outlets. She'll be doing the Tonight Show and the Today Show and like all these crazy appearances everywhere, like all this crazy stuff. And you got to think all the promos she was doing for movies too, trying to balance his two careers. I think she had more eyes on her than anyone's ever had in the sports history. So for her to sort of crumble under the media a little bit, I personally think it's understandable. So, she's back. I think that she will have at least somewhat of a better understanding of how to handle herself in that limelight, because it was such a mad rush. Even taking this 1 year off, which is another point I made in the video, it feels like it's been forever. It's been, I don't know, less than a year. She fought in November. So it'll be, let's see, like 13 months since her last fight by the time she comes back. I didn't even mention this. It's going to be December 30th. So by the time she comes back, it'll be 13 months, but it really hasn't been that long. It feels like it's 5 years ago. It's kind of the fast-moving world of MMA. But I don't know. I think that break is what she needed. I think she needed some time out of the spotlight. Obviously, the return's going to be massive. She's going to get a lot of media attention for that, so she will sort of get, quote-unquote, thrown right back into the proverbial media fire, media storm, whatever you want to call it. But I do think she will be able to handle it better. And from a fighting standpoint, I don't think she ever really lost a step. I don't even think Holly Holm's better than Rousey. I remember writing, right after Holly Holm won, I remember writing this whole article about how if they actually did rematch each other, I thought Rousey would win almost handily. Because she still is the best grappler, in that division. I think if it goes to the ground, she is going to finish anyone she goes against. What it basically was a product of, what it basically was a product of, outside of the media onslaught or whatever, was her sort of falling in love with her own hype, which also could be a media thing. But I feel like she's kind of falling in love with her own hype. She's trying to outdo herself. She's beating people in a matter of seconds. I felt like she needed to go faster and faster and get quicker finishes and all this craziness. So I feel like it was a combination of things, but she basically had the absolute worst strategy she could have possibly had against Holly Holm. Full out sprinted at a counterpuncher, got clipped, It looked like it was a beatdown, but I feel like as soon as she started getting lit up a little bit, she wasn't her normal self. Didn't know how to adjust or make changes throughout the fight, so she basically just continued with their game plan of bull rushing Holly Holm, who is arguably the best counter striker in the division, probably is, to be honest. And it was a terrible strategy. But when you see Holly Holm versus Miesha Tate, we've seen, I hate MMA math, I understand it doesn't always work, but when you see Holly Holm versus Miesha Tate, and Miesha Tate, she's probably losing the fight, but she got her to the ground and finished her with a submission. I think Ronda Rousey is more than capable of doing that. We've seen what Ronda Rousey did to Miesha Tate twice, really dominated her. So, like I said, I tend to shy away from MMA math because it does mislead you. But, just looking at that, it seems like Ronda Rousey could easily beat Holly Holm if she just fought her smarter. If she was more patient, waited for the opportunity to come to her, got the takedown and then finished her with a submission, I think that she would be able to finish her easily. Amanda Nunes actually thinks more dangerous than Holly Holm in a lot of ways, even with that smart strategy implemented, because she's an amazing sprinter. Kind of like Tyron Woodley, there's certain people who come out real fast, and if you could survive, the first 2-3 minutes, maybe the first round, then you're safe. But that first onslaught is as dangerous as it gets. Like, I don't care who you are, Amanda Nunes can put anyone away, like she did to Miesha Tate at UFC 200. She can put anyone away in a matter of moments. So what you have to do is basically survive that. And I think Ronda Rousey, if she's smart, she will. Who knows? She might come back extra eager as well and kind of fall into the same trap she did with Holly Holm. But if she is patient and survives that first onslaught, because Amanda Nunes is going to sprint at her, metaphorically, I guess. Like, maybe she might literally sprint at her too, but she's going to basically go out looking for that early finish against Ronda Rousey, take advantage of the ring rust, all that sort of thing. So that's a real risk. But if she can survive that, I do think Ronda Rousey beats Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes is a very big bantamweight, but I remember looking up the actual measurements, and Ronda Rousey is like an inch shorter and has an inch shorter reach. So to me, I don't think that's a very big difference. They're more or less the same size. I do still think Ronda Rousey is the most skilled fighter in that division. And yeah, I think she comes back and wins. So obviously December 30th is going to be a massive show. It's the New Year's Eve card, always a big card anyway. That's no coincidence they're putting Ronda Rousey on it. We don't know. Actually, a lot of the stars are used up on November. I guess if someone wins and dominates, they might be able to bounce back from that UFC New York card November 11th, bounce back and still fight on December 30th, but it'd be tight. So we'll have to see on that. But either way, Ronda Rousey headlining a card, that's a stats card. Who's not going to be interested in that? So she's coming back. Good news for the UFC. I think there's some speculation, too, with how she's kind of talking mentally. Would she actually come back? It's kind of hard to say. But she's come back. So congratulations to the UFC. That's the good news. The bad news is another superstar on his way out. So GSP broke some news today. It's Monday, October 17th. He broke news today that he's officially a free agent, no longer tied to the UFC. He obviously pseudo-retired, or I believe his words were whatever. He walked away from the sport for a while. Whatever he said after that Johnny Hendricks fight, we haven't seen him since. It's been hinted at that he'll come back. People have been talking about that since pretty much the day he left. The question was when. I don't know, lots of different things, but it's never really a question of where. He was the UFC champion, never even lost it. He obviously defended the belt against Johnny Hendricks, retired with the belt, so he vacated at that point, but he never lost the belt. So he's basically an undefeated UFC champion leaving. No one ever knocked him off his pedestal before he left. So he broke news on the MMA Hour today with Ariel Helwani saying that he's a free agent. And this seems like, I read it, all the details, I read into it as being bad blood, more or less. I feel like it was bad blood. He, I think, specifically claimed it wasn't. I think he said that, it wasn't emotional or anything like that. It was just, he understands the business. UFC's got to do what's in their best interest or whatever, which is all true, but that doesn't mean that, just because business isn't personal, that doesn't mean that it's not taken that way. And it seems like there is some bad blood there because of the way it was done too. So basically, Ariel Helwani's kind of poking the questions, but he said they were close to a deal. The UFC, because the whole sale was going through where the Fertittas were selling it to the new company for $4.2 billion or whatever, that whole big story. Basically, while that was going through, a lot of moving pieces, obviously, and they told GSP, who, like I said, reportedly was close to making a deal with the UFC, whether that's just talk or not, hard to say. But apparently, according to GSP, they were close, and they told them to basically put the deal on ice for 2 weeks or whatever. Just to kind of let things smooth over with new owners and get everything figured out, and then just wait for a second. It seems like at that point, that's when things started to go south. The new owners didn't really hear from him for 2 weeks. His lawyer found out that they're actually in breach of contract or something, got him released from his UFC contract, is what it seems like. So he's a free agent right now. That's not to say he won't use that as a negotiation tactic to get more money out of the UFC. Maybe he actually does switch promotions, go to Bellator, go to, I mean, not World Series of Fighting. I don't even know where else we'd go besides Bellator. That seems like that would be the front runner, especially with them hiring or signing Rory and different stars like that, Chael Sonnen. But it seems like he's a little upset about it, and understandably so. The quote at some point, he said, if Lorenzo was still there, it would be different. He has a feeling that, if Lorenzo still was there brokering the deal, if he was still the owner, that things might have stayed with the UFC, and he might still be in the UFC right now. But it seems like with the new owners, for whatever reason, fair, unfair, bad blood, or just business, whatever it is, he's out. He's out of the UFC. And like I said, I personally read it as bad blood, but it's interesting. I mean, the welterweight division is interesting for sure at Bellator. They're adding a lot to that. They're adding a lot to the middleweight division. It would suck if he came in there and then blocked Rory from getting another title. It'd be ironic, but it would suck because obviously he did that in the UFC forever. But bad news for the UFC for sure, because either it's going to cost them a lot more money or they lose one of their top stars. And say what you want, GSP is still a huge draw. He brings in a whole country, which is absolutely a factor. I mean, it's the McGregor effect, maybe not to that extent, but he does bring in the country of Canada more than anyone else could. So that's absolutely a factor, and that's going to hurt them for sure. So unfortunate there. Like I said, good news with Rousey, bad news with GSP. As I mentioned, I think we're just going to keep it to the MMA storylines here. So I'll probably wrap it up here for the video portion of the show. If you guys are listening to the podcast, I'm going to keep going. But signing up with the video portion, I hope you guys enjoy this. I'm going to do this probably, I don't know, every after show from now on. So I hope you guys enjoy. Yeah, that'll do it for this. So take care. Make sure you guys check out the actual, you know what? Yeah, no, this makes sense. I'll keep it in the video, take it out of the podcast, because you guys don't need to hear this audio if you're listening to the podcast. So this part's just for the video, I guess. Sorry, I'm figuring it out as I go. This is the sort of cool rawness you guys get when you watch me do this on the fly. But so the plan is to I don't even need this. The plan is to keep doing these video segments for the after show. We'll oh Jesus! See, this is what happens when it's raw. I lose stuff. Anyway, just check over to MMAMad.com. Go to the podcast section. MMAMad.com. We'll have the new episode up there. We're on Stitcher. We're on iTunes. Subscribe everywhere. The MMA Mad Podcast. MMA Mad Podcast on Twitter and Facebook. You can find me, Nick Rizner, MMA on Twitter. And then, of course, MMA Mad Official on Twitter and Facebook as well. But yeah, MMAMad.com will take you everywhere you need to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Check it out. Please subscribe. 5-star rating. Give us a text review. It's all super helpful. Thank you to those who have done it. We got a lot of good feedback, a lot of good traffic too on our last episode. So hopefully it's sort of the result of us combining all these things together, because it's a little bit extra work, but not too much. And the point is to sort of capitalize and, more than anything else, get as much attention as we can on the fighters and the people that we interview and things like that. So I hope you guys enjoy. I will catch you guys next week if I don't do a video before then. But, podcast every Wednesday, every Thursday. So if you guys are new, just subscribe or check us out on social media and you'll see where it's at. And that's it. So signing off for the video portion. Hope you guys enjoy it. Like I said, probably a recurring thing. So give me feedback though. I'll make whatever changes you guys want. So yeah, that does it. Take care. Go Cowboys.